Okay friends, it's time to get started on replacing our blower motor resistor harness. That's going to be located all the way down in this area. We're going to have to gain access to it, and to gain access, we're going to move along to removing our cruise control module. Up along the top, you'll find a 10mm headed bolt that holds the bracket in place to the fender. Remove the bolt and slide the unit aside. Let's keep digging. We're going to move along to this rubber hose. It connects onto the box down on the bottom. You can easily grab it, slide it out of position. Now I'll just take it and remove it from the blower motor. Just give it a little wiggle. It should slide right out of there. Now I'll just set this aside. At this point, you can carefully reach all the way down in here and you can get ready to disconnect it. For the camera, I'm just going to get a couple other things out of the way, but you do not need to continue on with disconnecting the rest of these wires. So this has opened up a little bit more, and we can start removing the harness from the resistor. Let's have a look at the new one real quick. So if you were to look at this one, you can see that it actually has two locking clips. One's up on the top, the other one's down a little lower. This will be fairly easy to remove using a curved pick. With the curved pick, I'm going to carefully try to get underneath each of the locking tabs. Generally, you can only do one at a time. I'll gently lift it, try sliding it towards the front of the vehicle to unlock it. Once I get one semi-unlocked, I'll continue on to the other one and just work my way back and forth until it finally releases. With that out of the way, we have a clear view of the blower motor resistor and the harness. To easily remove the harness from the blower motor resistor, let's remove the resistor from the box. To do that, we'll use an 8mm headed socket. Grab that with my magnet. That's what it looks like. Do the same to the other. Out of here. Reach in here, we'll grab that whole resistor. We can carefully lift it up to an easier working point. Since we have the resistor out of there, go ahead and give it a quick inspection. Make sure it's not rotted or rusted or damaged in any way. You want it to look like it's in good condition, otherwise it's not going to function properly. Ours looks fine, so let's continue on to the wiring harness itself, the reason why we're here. You can see the two locking tabs. You want to carefully try to get in between the resistor and the harness itself and separate those locking tabs. It can be hard to do two at once, and since we're replacing the wiring harness anyways with this entire area, I'm just going to go ahead and break them off. Now we can carefully grab onto this, give it a little wiggle, and separate it. Look inside your blower motor resistor. Make sure you don't see any corrosion. If you do, it needs to be taken care of. Let's set this aside for now and continue on with the wiring harness itself. Now we have a nice clear view of only the wiring harness. It's going to be time to start cutting some wires so we can splice them into the new wiring harness. Now when you do this, you only want to cut one wire at a time. You don't want to try arcing anything out in case there's any type of energy flowing through it for some reason. Generally, when I cut these wires, I like to make sure I leave a little bit so I can tell exactly which color goes to where on the harness for during the installation. Also, it's a good idea to try to stagger them a little bit. Essentially, make one wire a little longer than the other. There it is, friends. Let's have a look at the wiring harness that we just removed. I'll put it down on here. We want to pay attention to the length of each of the wires. Then we can look at our brand new wiring harness. Now obviously we don't need to have all of this wire. We gave you a whole bunch extra so you can make it as long as you deem necessary. But the important part is to make sure you cut them in the proper length. So for the first one, all I want to do is make sure I match this up. I'll spin it, lay it down, and then I'm going to make sure that I start cutting the wires accordingly. For my shortest wire, I'm going to give myself several inches. Set that aside for recycling. Now my next wire, just to the side of it, the red one here, as you can tell is a little bit longer. So I'll do the same on the new wiring harness. This one's longer than that one. And then our last wire, just a little bit longer as well. Now let's continue by removing the protective layer from the inner wiring. We'll use our wire strippers for that. When you do this, you want to give yourself plenty of area so you can have enough of the internal wiring to go into our connectors. A little squeeze, slide it right on off of there. I always like to give my wires a quick twist, and then I'll do the same to all. Now in the kit, you're going to find it came with 4 of these connectors. We want to take the wire and slide it all the way in through the connector until it goes into the metal aspect in the center. Go ahead and press it in there as far as it can go. Now we're going to crimp it down. You want to crimp it down on the metal aspect in the center, very close to where the wire is, but not necessarily on where the heat shrink is. I'll make sure I pull all my wires aside so I do not damage them. Most wire crimpers are going to have a color code on them, so it tells you exactly which area to use. Turn this so you can see exactly where I'm going. Now I'm going to squeeze this down as hard as I can to lock it in position. Once you have it squeezed down, go ahead and give it a tug. I'm trying to separate it as hard as I can. That feels good. Do the same to the rest. Now, as I mentioned, these connectors do have heat shrink on them. That's something that you're going to want to make sure you shrink once we have everything together. That can easily be done with a heat source. Now it's time for the electrical harness that's on the vehicle. We're going to do these wires one at a time, so there's no chance that any of the wires can make contact with each other. Before we grab our new harness, you need to make sure you know exactly which wire goes to where. Our green wire is at the bottom of our T. There we are. Now I'll connect this in there, squeeze it down. Now let's give it a nice tug and make sure they're securely connected. Once you're done that one, continue on to all the rest. Let's get this last wire connected. We'll lock it down. Give it a nice tug. Once you're sure all of your wires are secure, go ahead and heat them up with a heat source. As I'm heating this, you're going to see it start to shrink down up to the wire. That's going to make sure no moisture or debris or anything else makes its way into the area. Essentially protect the wiring in the connector. Obviously, do not breathe in any of the fumes from the plastic. Now we can do the same to the rest. Now we'll secure everything together with some electrical tape. Now we can line this up and plug it into the blower motor resistor. Give it a tug to make sure it's completely locked in on both sides. Let's have a quick look at the resistor. Up along the top where my fingers are, you can tell that it's rounded on the corners. Down along the bottom, it's notched. This is the position you want to have your resistor in when you go to mount it to the box. Okay? That should slide right into the box. You're almost going to feel it clip right in. All right, I got them both started. Let's go ahead and snug them up. There's one. Okay, got that other one. This one's a little harder to get to. All right, that's bottomed out. All right, let's reach down here. We're gonna give this a little wiggle. I wanna make sure it's secured to the box. After that, we can continue on with our rubber hose. I'm gonna take it so the elastic band makes its way around the blower motor. And then I wanna take this area with the slot and slide it into the corresponding hole on the side of the blower motor. Once I have that in there, I'll also put the far end all the way down into the box. Connect this back in and give it a tug. Let's plug this in as well. Now we can start reconnecting our cruise control module. Have a look at the bracket. You can see that you have this lower area that protrudes out. That's going to fit right into the side of the fender. There's a slot that's meant for it. Go ahead and slide it in, then line up your bolt hole with the bolt hole in the fender. We'll get this in here. All right, snug it up. Okay friends, we got the truck back together. Now at this point, hop inside the passenger compartment, put the key in the on position, and test your blower motor on all speeds. Thanks for watching.